Okay, we're back. Next, we're going to look at the information security and compliance policies, and specifically, I'm going to go into this guidelines. I'm on the same policy page that we were on earlier, same tab, but I've moved down the page, and under, you can see where I am. I'm going to go into the guidelines for information security and compliance. In here, you'll notice that there are a number of links and documents that are attached here. I think they're all PDFs, so they're all documents. Depending on your role at Enterprise Systems, most of you are IT workers, and depending what you're doing in your normal work, you probably should be aware of and look at these guidelines for IT workers. That may mean if you're implementing mobile applications, writing web applications, providing backup facilities, things like that. What is it that is expected of that particular aspect? I'm not going to go into depth here. I'll let you look at those yourself, and if there are questions, we can work through those at a later date. Secondly, as a user of restricted data, you may be using a mobile device of some sort. You may be using web pages, etc., email guidelines, things just as a user that you do. Those guidelines are here as well, and assuredly some of you are you're definitely doing some of these things, so take a look through those. And again, if there are questions, let me know. I'm going to go into the PII checklist. What you will find if you look through each of these is that they are completely parallel, just the topic of data changes. So we have 4 security checklists on restricted data. There's one for payment card info, one for personal identifiable info, one for educational records, or commonly you'll see that called, and you'll take some training, called FERPA. It's referring to this type of data, student data. And then one for health or HIPAA related data. And the reason they don't refer here in these policies specifically to FERPA or HIPAA is that there technically are multiple laws that cover these areas. Excuse me. And rather than point out a specific law here in these guidelines, they're talking to the collection of laws and have interpreted a policy across those, and those are adjusted as needed as time goes on. So we have annual training requirements to review this material, so get used to looking at it occasionally. You'll have to. Okay, so we'll go into personal identifiable. You'll notice these are relatively easy to read. Most of the laws have been, well, the law has been pretty much sanitized out so that you understand what you're supposed to do and not do. But here we're talking about data such as Social Security numbers, driver's licenses, financial accounts like a credit card or a bank account, with any kind of code or access or password. So it could also mean your GatorLink account could fall under here. For a full list of this, I think on the initial recording it was showing the Privacy Office has the exact details of what those are, but it's been summarized out here. But anyway, it's fairly straightforward what constitutes identifies an individual. The safeguards are such that you should never be accessing personal identifiable info without authorization to see it. In fact, Enterprise Systems had to get authorization to even have it and store it. It wasn't hard because we're kind of the origination point of much of that data for campus. The systems and applications we run are in fact the place where it enters campus. But every department who stores that on campus has to have pre-arranged permission with the Privacy Office before they can actually store that type of data. So when someone just asks for data out in a department and they want SSNs or they want some particular kind of PII, we cannot give that data to them until we know that they are authorized. Some of those are very common, like HR is already authorized, but we can discuss that as you have questions. Our core offices that generally have access to those data that pertain to their particular area. Kinds of areas that wouldn't, as a particular academic department, probably shouldn't get the PII without some approval from myself or Dave Gruber. Okay, you should only access PII through authorized applications, such as MyUFL. So although a department may be able to see something on a screen, that doesn't mean they can download data sets and store it on their servers. They probably have people that can do HR work and see such data, but that doesn't mean sending them a data set is allowed. Report exposed data immediately to the Privacy Office. I'm going to augment this. This is that pertains to what you would do here is you would report exposed data immediately to one of the 3 directors or myself, Warren Curry. So you would immediately do that, and by immediately we mean right now. As soon as you're aware of it, find one of us. If all else fails, finding Nancy Hodge or your direct supervisor can do it, but they need to do the same thing. Be a matter of they know how to find us. Don't assume because the door's closed you can't knock on it either. I'm going to go through this a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but you should never transmit any restricted data, PII or otherwise, through email, through any type of instant messaging, Facebook, or any other kind of tool like that. In fact, in the department there are only 4 specific ways that we allow you to move data, any kind of data, out of the department to other areas. So all of these things, we actually have a more restrictive procedure on moving data, and where our procedure is more restrictive than these safeguards and these guidelines, you need to follow the internal ES procedures on handling data, and you'll become aware of that as well in the next segment. We never store PII or student data or HIPAA data, any kind of data for that matter, on any computer that's not personally managed, your home computer or any computer that you might be on campus. In fact, what we really prefer you not do is store any data on any computer other than the drives and storage devices that are part of our production environment, that are backed up and that are known to be secure. So don't put data on your C drives, is what that basically means. Unless you have permission, don't store PII, or I'm going to add to this, any kind of our application data on a desktop computer, which is what I just said. Do not use any kind of removable media, CD, DVDs, USBs. If we haven't listed the thing you're talking about using, it's covered. Any kind of removable device that can be easily carried. The data should stay in our data storage systems that are provided by CNS. Okay, lastly, regardless of the use, practice the following safeguards at a minimum. So obtain approval for any device that you're storing data on. Now you have pre-approved permission to use our production devices that CNS staff provide us. You should always be using strong passwords, which you will, because of the password levels you have, you'll have the stronger password levels by virtue of being an Enterprise Systems employee. Do something to your workstation and set your password protected screensavers with a fairly short timeout, a couple minutes, but best practice is if you stand up and leave, lock your keyboard so that it's locked and then requires your password when you get back. But make sure you also, sometimes you'll forget, stand up, get distracted, whatever, and that thing should lock after you're gone for not more than 2-3 minutes. You don't want people going in, so protect yourself. Minimize the amount of data stored, specifically on any platform other than where we put it for our production. Accesses, you're wanting data on your laptop or desktop or any other device to be 0. And the length of time on those types of devices should also be 0. In general, we also don't want to save data forever unless there's a reason to have data forever. Everything has a retention policy for the most part, and by particular types of data, those data should be stored for a limited amount of time. That might measure in 7, 8, 9 years, but it's still a limited amount of time. Data that is stored, PII data that's stored, is generally should be encrypted to be under this policy, or have been looked at in some way where it's been exempted from the encryption policy. The other type of that is like for A lot of our devices, laptops, etc., which we're not putting data anyway, but if a mistake happens, we have whole disk encryption or encrypted thumb drives and things like that where we have to use those devices by exception. So be sure that you are following that and don't store data without encrypting it. Also, never use email, never use those types of things. I'll repeat that over and over and over. So there's never a good time to use email for data. All data should be encrypted as it's being transmitted. As you're building applications here, just know that you should always be using, at this point in time, SSL 2048 encryption whenever data is in transport. And that should be part of the setup that's provided for you. As an application developer, you shouldn't necessarily be worried too much about that, but depending on the project you're in, you need to make sure that it's in fact doing that. Refer to the backup policies, but again, encrypting backups because they are sending data actually to other cities and off-site locations, so we need to make sure that the backups are properly encrypted as well. If we dispose, or when we dispose of devices, we need them to become unreadable. We in fact recycle those devices, or we send those devices to a certified destructing agency, and they pick up the material on as we need to basically incinerate and totally destroy the media that's not used any longer. So, okay. If I go back, keep an eye towards what that just said, and I look at the personal education, the student records data, you'll notice that this is a completely parallel set of content, just we changed the topic to student privacy as opposed to personal privacy. So you can infer from that the medical or health related data does exactly the same thing. So what I'm saying to you at this point is just know that we treat all data as if it's restricted, and it doesn't matter how it is. Every type of data that we have that comes out of our applications should be handled in this very same manner. You don't have to know if it's student restricted, if it's personal restricted, or if it's health restricted. Treat all data, restricted or not, in the same manner. Okay, thanks for your time.